Hello friends. Back again with me in the movie review segment. I will discuss and review a pretty scary horror movie called He's Out There, 2018. This film tells the story of a family who goes on vacation to a remote villa in the middle of the forest. Unbeknownst to them, the place holds a mysterious figure that will terrorize them all the time. Curious about the full story? Let's get straight into the discussion. Oh yes, don't forget to support this channel with like and subscribe so you don't miss the latest video updates. The movie opens with a scene of a little girl named Kayla who is engrossed in reading a fairy tale from a magazine before finally falling asleep. Meanwhile, Medic is busy playing with a doll. It wasn't long before Medic started scrawling on the sidewalk with colorful chalk, committing small acts of vandalism.
Maddie, stay away from this.
Almost hit by a passing car. Fortunately, he survived, although his mother, Laura, seems to be used to her son's mischievous behavior and doesn't seem to mind too much. Laura herself was getting ready to leave for a vacation to a villa she had just bought from a real estate agent. However, their departure plans are slightly disrupted as her husband, Sean, suddenly has to attend a sudden meeting at the office. Regretfully, Sean apologized to Laura for not being able to leave together. However, he promised to catch up as soon as his business was over. Although a little disappointed, Laura still decided to leave first for the happiness of her children who were enjoying their grade promotion vacation. After a long journey through increasingly deserted roads, Laura and her children finally arrived at their destination villa. However, they had no idea that this vacation would turn into a nightmare. However, Laura had a hard time trying to open the rusted padlock. She tried several times, but to no avail. Not long after, a local man who doubles as the villa's caretaker, named Owen, came over to her. Casually, Owen said that the lock could definitely be opened. While making small talk, Owen told her that the villa, now owned by Laura, used to be occupied by a family. However, they decided to sell it after being deeply traumatized by the loss of their son in this forest area. Before leaving, Owen warned Laura to always keep a close eye on her two daughters. Hearing this, Laura thanked him and immediately brought her children into the villa.
Thank you.
When they arrived at the lakeside villa, the two children were overjoyed. They ran around, enjoying the beauty of the property that might one day be theirs. Meanwhile, Laura was busy unloading things from the car, when suddenly her cell phone rang. It was a call from her husband, Sean. In a brief conversation, Sean said that he would be leaving soon to catch up with them. Sean, on the other hand, is seen choosing toys as surprise gifts for his two daughters in celebration of their grade promotion.
Hey. Girls, Hey! I'm watching you.
However, what gives you goosebumps is the fact that this villa is the only building in the middle of a vast and silent forest. After a long and tiring journey, Laura, who was starting to feel sore all over, finally settled down on the sofa. The sound of tongarits echoing in the distance created a calm atmosphere, making her feel a little more comfortable. However, at the same time, her two children who had just finished playing on the swings suddenly stopped playing when they saw a red thread stretching towards the forest. Their curiosity was aroused. Who put up this thread? Meanwhile, Laura, who had just finished packing up, suddenly panicked when she realized that her two daughters were not around. Anxious, she rushed to find them.
Girls? Girl?
However, relief soon enveloped her heart when she found that both of her children were fine. Once everyone was back inside, Laura asked Kayla and Medic to quickly change and prepare for dinner. However, before leaving, Laura noticed that Kayla seemed to be hiding something in a drawer. With a face full of secrets, Kayla said that it was a surprise for her father.
Alright, well, get changed and come on down. I'm gonna make some pizza.
Nothing dark here,
Night fell. After enjoying pizza, Laura reads a fairy tale to her 2 daughters. However, in the middle of the story, Kayla suddenly looked lethargic and asked her mother to take her to her room. Seeing her daughter's condition, Laura immediately took Kayla to bed. However, when she was about to leave the room, she noticed Medic, who also looked weak. Even his face began to turn pale. Although she was worried, Laura believed that their condition would improve the next day. She asked her children to get some rest. After making sure they were asleep, Laura went to the living room and prepared a bottle of coffee and a cigarette to accompany her as she waited for Sean's arrival. However, before she could light a cigarette, her cell phone suddenly rang. It was Sean. With a slightly surprised tone, Sean asked why Laura didn't answer the phone earlier. Just then, Laura realized that she had left her phone in the car. In a brief conversation, Sean informed her that he was already on his way and expected to arrive around midnight. Hearing this, Laura asked her husband to be careful on the road. Unbeknownst to Laura, a mysterious creature had been watching her from the darkness. That night, while she was sleeping, she was suddenly woken up by Kayla, who looked panicked.
Mommy. Something's wrong with Maddie.
With a trembling voice, Kayla told her that Medic's condition was getting worse.
Maddie?
Laura, who was starting to panic, immediately tried to provide first aid. However, something strange happened. Medic's symptoms were very similar to poisoning.
Alright, we got it.
A feeling of dread began to creep into her mind. She hurriedly asked what her children had eaten today. With a terrified face, Kayla confessed that it all started when they were playing in the forest. While following the red thread that runs between the trees, they found a tempting-looking cake dish. Without thinking, Kayla tasted it. However, unlike Medic, the boy preferred to keep it as a gift for his father. Laura's consciousness was shattered. Someone had targeted her family. She immediately tried to call for help, but as often happens in horror situations, her cell phone suddenly lost signal. In a state of panic, Laura attempted to retrieve her cell phone, which she had left in the car. However, when she got there, she found something even more terrifying. Her cell phone had vanished. Someone had taken it.
Get up, come on.
Her fears were compounded when she saw that the bolts on her tires had been removed. Someone wanted to make sure they couldn't escape from this place. With no other choice, Laura rushed her children back into the villa and locked all the doors and windows. They could only hope that Sean would arrive soon to save them from this terror. However, the suspense wasn't over yet. Suddenly, there was a faint knock on the window. Laura froze, her eyes staring fixedly at the source of the sound. Her heart was racing. What was really going on? Why was her family the target of this terrifying terror? Laura tried to calm her children, but Medic's condition worsened. The boy was vomiting again, making the situation even more chaotic. In the midst of the panic, a cold chill suddenly enveloped the room, a sign that someone, or something, was watching them from outside the house. On the other hand, Sean finally arrived at the villa.
Daddy?
However, strangeness immediately ambushed him. The main gate was locked tightly. He tried to find a way to get in, until finally finding a piece of paper with a strange message telling him to follow the red thread path in the forest. Thinking it was just a silly prank, Sean decided to call Laura.
Hello, Laura?
However, his call went unanswered. Anxiety began to creep into him. Cautiously, he began to follow the mysterious clues.
Hey, what do we got, me? Come on. Laura.
Meanwhile, inside the villa, Laura tried to calm her children down. She tried to convince them to stay positive. After all, their father was on his way. But the calm didn't last long. Suddenly, a loud banging sound came from the roof tiles, leaving them gripped with fear again. They were slightly relieved when they heard Sean's voice from outside.
What is that?
Although her heart was still filled with anxiety, Laura ventured to check outside the window. However, what she found made her hair stand on end. The sound was coming from a tape hanging outside, with its eyes missing as if warning them of something terrible. Not long after, the terror continues. The psychopathic figure is back in action.
Trick, bad man outside. I need to be first one.
This time using the classic trick of turning off the electricity. Laura, who could no longer distinguish between reality and a trap, quickly grabbed a knife and a flashlight. Quickly, she locked the door, hoping to buy some time. However, the ever-increasing pressure made her even more desperate. In the tense silence, her tears began to flow. Suddenly, an idea struck her: the car Sean was driving. If she could get the keys, they would still have a chance to escape. Wasting no time, Laura ventured out, promising her children that she would only need 20 seconds. Successfully getting the key, she returned in a hurry and immediately asked her children to leave the place. However, just as she was about to leave, a car horn suddenly sounded from outside the villa. A panicked Laura quickly checked and was relieved to see a man in uniform passing by. This was her chance. She tried to call for help, but the jammed window made her voice inaudible. Fear intensifies when something unexpected happens. In an instant, the psychopath attacked the man. Without thinking, Laura immediately took her daughter to hide again.
Let's go.
In an instant, a psychopath appeared and dragged Laura away in front of her children's eyes. Kayla and Medic could only scream hysterically, like chicks losing their mother. But in the midst of the panic, Kayla knew they couldn't keep quiet. Bravely, she grabbed the knife in her hand and urged her sister to run away.
Daddy?
And now her mother is also a victim of the psychopath. Realizing that, these two little princesses immediately ran into the villa again. Calmly, he introduces himself as John, the son of the previous owner of the house who was rumored to have disappeared in the forest years ago. Apparently, John survived the incident. However, in agonizing silence, he kept waiting for his parents' return every year. Unfortunately, they never returned. Slowly, he began to feel forgotten and abandoned, as if his existence no longer mattered. The heartache intensified when she saw Laura's family coming to the villa every vacation. Their happiness, their togetherness, all of it only added to the hurt in his heart. Until finally, he made a terrible decision. If he couldn't have a family, then he would create his own family, from Laura's body parts. The next day, the horrors they experienced were not over. John, with his crazy plan, attempted to create a doll family using real human body parts. With great care, he began hollowing out the eyes of the dolls, intending to implant Laura's children's eyes into them. Not stopping there, he even planned to attach real hands to the dolls, as if to create living beings from the body parts of his victims. However, in the midst of the madness, a musical voice from another direction suddenly caught his attention. John was worried that Laura and her children had escaped, so he went to check the source of the sound. Laura did not waste this opportunity. With the courage of a mother who didn't want her children to get hurt, she attacked back with full force. A fierce battle ensued, and John was left helpless. Meanwhile, Kayla tried to wake up her sister who was still unconscious. Before long, they were relieved to see that Laura was still alive and had successfully fought the psychopath.
Because the darkness and the crowd flew away. So come, I'm looking for you.
Without thinking, Laura immediately invited her 2 children to escape. However, the tranquility only lasted for a moment. Just as they're about to leave, something horrifying happens. John's body has disappeared. He's vanished into thin air, leaving the big question, will he come back to terrorize them? Unfortunately, just as the suspense is building, the movie comes to an abrupt end. This story is really suspenseful, isn't it? With the intention of going on vacation, you end up in an unforgettable nightmare. Who would have thought that the boy who was once lost in the forest would now turn into a horrible psychopath, just because of the heartache of being abandoned by his family? And to make matters worse, he wants to build his own family, with dolls adorned with human bodies. Although Laura manages to defeat John, her husband remains a victim. And the scariest thing of all, the psychopath is still alive and could return at any moment.